Richard Harvey is a psychospiritual psychotherapist and spiritual teacher. His work emerged out of the human potential movement of the 1970s. He trained with many teachers in humanistic and transpersonal approaches. He's the founder of Sacred Attention Therapy, a radical new approach to inner work for the 21st century that proposes a three-stage model of human awakening. Richard is the author of Your Essential Self and the Flight of Consciousness, among many other publications. He works with people all around the world, and his next book will be published later this year and is entitled Your Sacred Calling. And Richard, can I invite you at this time to come on screen with us? Thank you for joining us.
I'm very happy to be here.
High in the mountains in southeast Spain, at this late hour. So we're very glad that you're with us. Richard, we are most blessed to have a beautiful collection of questions that have been previously submitted that I'll invite to begin today's satsang. And the first question asks, what is the role of ritual in spiritual practice? What is the role of ritual in spiritual practice?
It's a lovely question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
My first teacher said everything is ritual, and I tend to, you see, follow that. I also had a Tai Chi teacher who taught how standing and cleaning your teeth is a ritual. So, you know, ritual abounds. I mean, everything can be dedicated to the sacred. Everything can be performed with spiritual sensibility, awareness, of course, and consciousness. So rituals everywhere. And perhaps we're talking here about something a little more specific. In spiritual practice, I think they asked Nisargadatta, for example, now that you're perfectly enlightened, why do you still sing bhajans, and why do you light incense, and why do you have pictures of these avatars and enlightened beings on your wall? And I think he replied, well, you know, what else is there to do? What else should I be doing? He did it as a way of recognizing and paying respect and showing reverence, even though he was at one with all of life. So, you know, we do these things because in a sense everything is ritual, and sometimes you also do these things as a way of showing gratitude, as a way of perhaps connecting the conscious and the unconscious realms, certainly the divine and the human realms. And we do it because it's beautiful. I mean, some of the most wonderful moments of my life have been in rituals with other people, when there's a conscious, ritualistic element to what's happening, and you know, you can just burst into tears with the gentleness, the tenderness, and the depth of reverence. So really anything that will bring that about is all right with me. So rituals everywhere, rituals everything. And its place in sacred spiritual life is many and varied. Embrace it all, I would say.
Thank you. The next question, Richard. It's a bit of a lead-in, and it asks, we have to die to our lower forms of love many times over in our lifetime in order to resurrect into higher forms of love. Our lower forms cannot understand the higher love, but the higher love we attain can understand the lower forms we have risen up from. Would you like to describe the stages of this transition?
Look, it's all love, isn't it? It's all love. I mean, the challenge for us, of course, is to see love, particularly in those places of darkness where we are still unable to see love. It's a kind of prejudice, it's a kind of blinkeredness, it's a kind of choosing a part of God over some other part of God. It can't be done. This is totality. This is without diversification. And there's variety and diversification in the human realm, but in the divine there is no difference. All is the same. So it's all love from whichever way round you look at it. But in the 3 stages of awakening, which we speak of in sacred attention work, you can detect the movement through the stages of love to a higher love from, if you will, a lower or animalistic version of love, which is of course all those things which we have great difficulty with as human beings: jealousy, possessiveness, bitterness, separation, division, giving and taking, betrayal, punishment, hate, which is the flip side, and all of these kinds of things. And when we look at those reactive, emotional dynamics that come from the early or the primitive experience of love, we may and we may not aspire to something of more ease, or something of more acceptance, or something that's deeper, or something that's more satisfying to the heart. But in order to become aware of all of these aspects, all the experiences, qualities that are satisfying and fulfilling to the heart, we have to raise our awareness or our consciousness into the heart. So we picture it or we experience it energetically, perhaps, as raising our awareness from the lower or the animalistic chakra concerns into the heart energies. And we think of compassion and authenticity and love and centeredness. And here there is a acceptance, of course, of all of these conditions. And in sacred attention work, the 3 stages of awakening then move through the heart energies and the heart satisfaction and fulfillment in compassion, and in essentially the insight that there is only one, which is dawning in the 2nd stage of awakening, which is to say, we don't actually give and receive love. There is actually no possessive or jealous or ownership of love. We simply get out the way and we allow love to come through. And we realize ultimately through sacred spiritual life and sensibility and what we call sadhana or spiritual discipline, that love is all. Love is God, love is reality, love is truth, truth is love. And so this is the movement, or these are the steps, or this is the evolution of love from a separation through self-identification, a kind of division, into the awareness of the heart, and then further into the radical insight that everything is love, and that love is not divisible in any way.
Can I come in there?
Please do, Marion.
Marion.
Okay. Hello. This about love, in my experience, and also working with clients. People, although all is love and God is love everywhere, we don't all feel that love. Hence, we feel, let's say, God works in mysterious ways because we don't understand God's love quite. We understand different types of love or layers of love. For example, you can fall in love with your head. A head space love is different from your heart space love. Your heart space love is different from your lower tummy, belly, sexual love. Some people marry for the sexual love, some people marry from the heart love, some people marry from the head love. Some people relate from a mixture of all, and so on. This is Robert Brownie says that, Kierkegaard says that, Plato goes back to saying that. And if you look at our growth from the cradle to where we are up to now, you've gone through different quality of your love. A little child has a non-reflective love, an innocent love, a virgin love. And what feeds back to him from his mum or his dad often is a rejection of that. The world, culture, our education can reject us. People's romance, they get rejected. They're not understood fully. Why not? Because they don't understand themselves. They have projected onto the other a love they want from the other, and that other cannot fulfill them in that way. So sometimes we can interpret that rejection as the opposite of love. Dark force, hate, resentment, and so on. And then from that, some people get stuck or trapped in that and never quite open up again to the beauty of a deeper sense of reflective love, where we reflect back onto ourselves. But others can plummet that hell, can plummet that depth, can work it through and feel a resurrection. And when they resurrect, the love that they had originally or experienced originally is different the next time. They have a quality to it that they didn't have originally because of their growth and their awareness. And I think that goes on in different ways throughout our life. And hopefully by the time we're our age, there is a kind of a depth, flexibility, and more of what you had there in theory, an awareness of not judging, an awareness of being able to let go constantly what our little desires are, or our little habits, or our little ways, and be able to conjoin both the good and the bad in such a way where there is a love that transcends both. But, as Huxley said, beautiful theories are slain by ugly facts. So sometimes we have beautiful theories, but we ask ourselves in our lower self, am I living that theory? Or is there still bits of me that are not alive to that theory, have not yet grown up enough to become one with that theory? As we know, our experiences is of jealousy, wanting this, wanting the other, and so on. That's not quite in love yet. It's still a step outside of that God love that you were saying there. And I think that's a very interesting movement. I don't know what the other two think, or what you think. I'll stop there for the moment.
Thank you. Do others want to say something? Contribute something?
Carla, smiling.
I was going to share that you very eloquently, if not poetically, expressed yourself, Marion, and I'm grateful for that. I particularly appreciated your insights that it's all fine and good to have the theory, but practice sometimes cannot fit perfectly into that theory. It's I'm reminded where in so many spiritual traditions, when it comes to spiritual practice, whether it be love or whether it be forgiveness or any other myriad of what might be perceived as virtuous practices, that practice, and then practice, and this process of love, in perhaps the purest sense that Richard was alluding to in what he shared, is, at least in my experience, is a process of practice and more practice. And then when you think you got it, practice it some more. It's a never-ending invitation to practice.
Yes. It depends what we mean by practice as well, I think. Because that can be from the head only, or it can have heart in it, or it can have belly in it.
Yeah.
It's how these three brains are put together, I think, as well. And I think we are not in control of that practice fully. I think we are when we're young. If you like, you can call that the ego structure or the lower self. We think we are. But then gradually, as we age, that little thought gets knocked. And we discover, lo and behold, I'm not in control of all this. There is a force far greater than me, far more powerful, and doesn't want me to pin him down or pin it down or box it up. But that power is in control. And gradually, as you get out of the way of that power, it starts to show you. As Frank Kafka would say, the world unfolds as it should, and you are not in control. And that, I would say, is a far greater sort of love than maybe as I started off in my 20s in doing spiritual practice, where I was idealistic. I thought I really knew what good, true, and beautiful was, and practice until you're worn out and tired. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I'm going the wrong way here. This is developing a very good lower self or ego structure, but it isn't getting out of the way of a power that made me in the first place. So therefore you become aware in your spiritual practice of that lower self and higher self, and a bit of a squabble. Because the lower self wants to take over and be a little bit like God. Exactly like European Union and politicians want to be. The big dog, the big cat. And we have to discover that in becoming that enlightened being that we're looking for and our true self, we have to experience a massive amount of powerlessness. A powerlessness in our lower self. If you like, a servitude in our lower self, so that this higher self starts to come through. And it's a kind of an awakening of a different sort when it starts to come through. And as it does, every now and again, the lower self gets in the way and blocks it. Because it goes, oh, I can jump on this. I'm growing, I'm learning. And then it blocks the light a little bit, quite a lot sometimes. And then you go, uh-oh, I've got to get out of the way of this again. You don't really belong to your small self or the world in that sense. I think the worldly self is full of rigid rituals, if you like to go back to your first question. But I think those rituals are deadening. It's a false security. It's a false safety. It's not the real ritual of something that is in the hidden self, the deep innermost self. That when that comes, it works in the twilight almost. It's not ritualistic. It can't be, because if it's ritualistic, it can be nailed down, tied down. It's a false beauty. But this higher self comes up from another place, a freeness, a freedom, an awakening, an awareness, and you can't control it, and you can't own it. And that's the sort of love that I was talking about, really. In that question, moving from all our little loves, gradually dying. And we do in our life die many times. I know Shakespeare said that in Twelfth Night, when he said, I have died 1,000 deaths, and so on. But he was also saying the awareness he got was derived out of how he focused on those deaths and what resurrected from those deaths that gave him a feel of this power that was behind it all. I'll shut up now.
Before I invite Glenda and or Carla to share if there's anything they wish to, Richard, was there anything you wanted to respond to that last exchange?
Marion, as you said, very lucidly and clearly speaks of those depths and this interaction between the small and the higher self. And as ever, Marion, we're not in any kind of dissonance here at all. I think what you're speaking of is what I'm speaking of in my stages, the dynamics of not being in control for the smaller self, for the ego self, for the younger years, is addressed in the movement from the first to the second stages of awakening, which, I mean, you certainly don't need to look at in any more depth because you've just been expounding it very well in your own words. Let me just say again, we're on the same page.
I'm sure. I'm sure, yes.
Carla or Glenda, at this time, before I move into some playful questions, is there something you would like to share with Richard at this time?
Hi. Yes, I would like to share, just hearing you both, well, all three of you. I really love your accents. I'm enjoying that. And I was remembering yesterday a picture that I love very much of Kermit the Frog. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's I've pasted it on Facebook sometimes, and it's Kermit visiting the psychologist. And the have you seen it? And it's the psychologist saying something like, I'm not sure if you want to hear this, what I have to say. And you can see it's like a X-ray, and you can see the hand inside of the frog. So I love that. Whenever it gets back to me in Facebook, I always post it again, because for me, in my experience, it's been recognizing first that, like you say, Marian, I'm not in control in my lower self. And that I've really been a puppet of my conditioning, of my defenses, my beliefs, and then realizing that also when I'm not in when it's like now I'm not in control either, because it's really love what guides me and what lives me and what talks through me. So either way, in my lower or my higher self, there's no control, and it's lovely. It's lovely, and it's freeing to see that. And when I see that it's not my conditioning that is talking through me, but love, yeah. It's all love. So thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Glenda, if there's ever a question or a dialogue you'd wish to initiate with Richard, you can simply indicate so in the Skype message center. And if you're not familiar with how to use that message center, just wait for a pause in the discussions and then turn on your microphone and please come in and share with Richard. Richard, I'm going to move ahead with a playful question that's come forward. It asks, how does our spirit experience our life in this time and space?
How does our spirit experience our life in this time and space?
In this time and space.
Look, there's going to be many answers to this, but I always answer things as if it's the truth, so bear with me. The spirit doesn't exist in time and space, and one of the most difficult things for those of us on the spiritual path is, of course, to deal with the addiction to experience, which is, in a sense, the ubiquitous attachment to life itself. It doesn't mean to say that we have to be dead in order to be spiritual, by the way. What it does mean, however, is that spirit in its pure sense is outside of space and time. Our spiritual events or our spiritual life take place in a reference point to eternity, not in a reference point to time and space. And that's a difficulty. It's a difficulty that I address through speaking of soul and spirit and not coinciding the two. And it's a difficulty because we live in material times, and so it seems that if we're not experiencing it, and if we're not conceiving of it, and if we don't know how it works, and if we don't come at it from a scientific or a temporal spatial perspective, then somehow maybe it isn't, because it's kind of invisible or mysterious, or we'll never understand it. But God, the truth, reality itself, is not understandable in the sense of a mental or rational intellectual way of understanding. It's understanding in a direct intuitive sense. But the point that I would make in response to this question more than anything else is my spirit, your spirit, our spiritual reality is transcendental. And what that means essentially is that it takes place in relationship to eternity. It always was, it always is, it always will be. So there is no experience of the spirit of this present day or any other day, partial or experiential, arising and dissipating series of events, which is known as a lifetime.
Thank you. Another question, Richard, that's come forward asks, please describe the process of letting go and letting God. Please describe the process of letting go and letting God.
Well, we begin with all the assumptions and expectations of the early life predicament. And they, of course, are extraordinarily complex. And they're involved with the organization of our early experience in relationship to events that take place over the first 5 or so years of life. The result of those 5 or so first years of life is we construct a character and personality as a kind of buffer to direct experience, to life itself. And it's a great act of courage and persistence. And courage and persistence in order to actually dismantle and be brave enough to let go of that sense of self. Still, the ego self as such, or the small self, is not dismantled as such. One becomes a heartfelt human being. One becomes orientated in a totally different way to the world. And if and when it's within one's capacity and potential, This is not really a matter of choice. You can want it all you like, but it's either in your nature at this point or it isn't. To forfeit even that, to forfeit even the more exalted experiences and attainments of the human life, and offer it to God, then in the final letting go, you of necessity enter a period of spiritual preparation, which may take the entire rest of your life and more. I mean, one really can't know. And through this period of relinquishing, of intense loss, all therapy, all healing, all sacred spiritual practices as such are characterized by loss. Only by opening to that loss do you go through this rather nice play on words, letting go and letting God. You become aligned with that which is divine in yourself. You realize yourself then as the divine person. There is no different people, you see. There is no separate identities. It appears that way, but in reality there's merely the divine person, which I am, which you are. So entering into that intense and ongoing, sequential layering of what seems sometimes to be endless loss, holding on to nothing at all. Eventually you uncover the jewel in your own heart, the precious treasure within. That precious treasure within is the divine that draws us all together in unity. This unity is the only thing that's real. Let go, let God. Rather nice. I've not heard that before.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry, Marion.
Can I come in there when you've just
Sure.
completed your chapter? Again, it's the experience of being a counsellor for a long time, few decades, that when persons hold on, when we hold on, we want something from the world, we want something from the other, and we hold on. The holding on is a bit like that. We won't let go until it's painful. So we keep a hold of that until it gets so painful, we're forced to let go. And in that letting go, it's again this struggle between, if you like, our temporal self and this eternal self that wants to come through. So although I think it was St. Augustine that says, time is the moving image of eternity. So eternity is behind everything and time moves through it. We come in and we want to grab something of time, grab something of the world. We all do it. We all want to grab it. I've had certain clients who cannot look at their spouse in a realistic way. They have put upon their spouse certain attributes. It's nothing to do with their spouse, but they cling to that because they can't relate to that person if they don't cling to that. So there's no letting go and letting reality or letting that person be who they really are, because they're clinging to that image, that falseness. And it will carry on like that until it gets painful enough. They will only let go when it's painful. They won't let go because it's some divine attribute of letting go. They will only let go when it's painful. It's exactly the same in counselling, that if you're working with, let's say, a paedophile, somebody who's in a pleasure situation, he will not change from the pleasure situation until it gets very painful. It's only when it's very painful that you can actually change something in that individual. You can work with it for a kind of letting go. I've certainly noticed that. But I've also noticed in us, most of us, in all of us, how tenacious we are and how holding we are to our points of view, our feelings, our crockery, our house, our wherever, our dog. And it's only when a pain comes that it sort of forces something through inside us And when we can't let go, or if you like, we're not fully in control of that letting go, it happens mysteriously from the will. And then we go, God, why didn't I do that before? But it comes through. And that, I think, is part of our development and why we have time. We have to go through all the processes of holding, feeling pain, letting go. Holding on, feeling pain, letting go. And each time we do, we get more insight.
Absolutely.
Glenda, I understand you'd like to share something. Please do.
Hi. Hello from the UK.
Hi, Glenda.
Hello, good evening, everybody. This is my first satsang. So this is new for me. I've been on this part of my spiritual journey, I would say, in the last, I would say, nearly 10 years. Now, however, when you were talking about letting go, letting God, wow, and I feel that spirit within me while I'm speaking, so bear with me, because this is what I feel, that in my letting go, I'm becoming that of who I truly am. Yeah, the fear of what I was always taught wasn't going to be, you know what I mean? So as I let go, I know what's going on inside of me. I know it's the spirit within me. But when you say letting go, to let God, I think there's a fear, and it's not about pain. I think it's a fear of that which we don't know, or that we have been told is not true. So for me, and when you were speaking just before, what came up for me was, wow, to let go of everything, to let go of wanting to make money, to let go of helping others, to let go, because that's the only way that I can come through. Does that, I don't know if that makes sense for anybody else, but what for me was coming up there was the challenges that I face day to day, and usually it's around materials, which is the fine. And I think if it weren't for the financial thing, I think, you know what I mean? But to let go of it, yeah, and allow me or I to be, and I think that is what is my fear. And then I'm thinking, is that what it is? Because all I'm saying is what you were saying, what came up for me while you were speaking. So for me, it was about letting go of, just letting go. But my fear is that do I have to be like everybody else, because someone else is going to say, no, it's not that. But what I'm getting is letting go, just letting go and being that who I am, if that makes sense. Without questioning, without discussing, but that's what, so, and I feel that's what I'm feeling. So it's not about the physical, whatever it is. So I'm just asking, is that okay? Because, like I said, I can only go by how I think and how I feel right here, right now.
I would, nothing to be sorry about. Glenda, I mean, sounds great. I mean, sounds like you're on the way. It sounds like you're there. Just keep going with loss. Of course, you don't have to be like everybody else, but neither do your sticking points have to be the same as everybody else. I mean, if it's making a living or money or some material aspect, or so, it'll fall away at the right time as you bring awareness to it. And don't forget, it's not the thing in and of itself. I mean, there are spiritual people here amongst us. You know, we also have to make money for this, that, and the other reason. The question is, you know, are we attached? The question is, are we inappropriately clinging to it? The question is, the painfulness that Mariam points out. You're saying fear. I would say in a longer discussion, we're probably talking about suffering, you see. So whether it's fear, which is your face of imagine it as a crystal or a stone or something. It's the same stone, it's called suffering. And on one face it's pain, another face it's fear, another face it's sadness or depression, or on another face it's anger or hate or what have you. Nonetheless, it's one thing and one thing alone. It's self-identification with a system of feeling or experience or reactivity to events with which you identify. Now, without this identification, without this constant and persistent action of mind that says, for example, I'm Richard Harvey, I'm a spiritual teacher, I'm giving a satsang, here's Robert, he's a ordained minister, here's Marion. All of this is relatively true, but it's also not true. What's really going on here and what's really going on in our life. I had a lovely person a couple of days ago in a counselling situation who had this experience. It's a kind of basic experience, but it's one that it's lovely to see people having. And it was loosely that she understood when she got up and she was in a bad mood, everything looked angry. That she's driving the car, it doesn't go well, the door bashes against your arm, the guy in the grocer's store is nasty, we know all this. And anyway, she discovered this, and she discovered conversely that when she got up and she felt loving, right? You know where this story's going. Suddenly it's all in harmony, the lights change at the right time when you're driving, you go around, everything's going well. Why? How? There is a narrative in our life, and try not to be attached to it too powerfully. Try not to cling to the self-identification and then the projections onto other people about how they're behaving in your story. And you get to the end of your day and say, well, that was a great day. Or you get to the end of your day and say, that was terrible. And what a horrible day, I'm glad to go to bed. In the sacred spiritual dimension of life, you learn when from a personal perspective things are very good and satisfactory and all's going well, and you learn when it's diabolical. That's what's nice. That's one of the things anyway, that's nice about spiritual life. You kind of can't lose. And so when you're looking at identifying yourself and your aspect of suffering and fear, and should you be like everybody else? No. Be absolutely like yourself and bring awareness to your fears and awareness to what you're holding on to. And see if you can slowly bring yourself to the awareness that all of this confirms you in the idea, at least, that there's Glenda, aka Lady G. Andrew, and that she is in contrast to, say, Richard Harvey, Robert Muir, Marion Duff, and so on, and to the world at large. Because it's not true. It's absolutely not true. The truth is, there is no separate self-identification. While you have that idea, your mind is very powerfully, strongly, every morning the mind gears in and uploads the whole thing, as we know. But sometimes if you're a little relaxed and you've got the time and hopefully the alarm didn't go in order to wake you up, sometimes you can wake up and you're disorientated or orientated. Maybe there's a little thread of the truth, a little thread of reality there you can capitalize on. But you know what happens. I'm Richard Harvey and I'm in this circumstance, these events. The only difference through this process of loss and attaining the sacred spiritual dimension to life is It happens to all of us. I'm sure it happens to Robert, Marion, Carla, and to you, and it happens to me. I don't believe it anymore. I don't believe in it as the truth anymore. I believe it is a convention. And when I do things I do lots of things with Robert, we do them on time, and we say words, and we make decisions, and we do all this stuff. But it is taking place within the realm of space and time in service to the eternal. That's the orientation. And that's real, and that's where you're going. And you sound to me as if you're very, it's going very well. So I would just carry on. Glenda, you're doing really well. It's fantastic. I love everything you said.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
There's another potential question that's been submitted, but are there other spontaneous questions people have at this time?
Well, I might just comment on Glenda. I think I would agree totally with Glenda, really, and the way she put it as well. And just aware of the oneness of a soul experience when you let go and you feel the spirit, also contradicting that simultaneously the separative self, the temporal self that is full of dualistic processes. We're in this world, and those dualistic processes, the dark, the light, the up, the down, good day, bad day, work through us all the time as well. And it's a kind of an interesting dance between that lower self that has to have the fear and the hope and the everything else up and down, versus something else that is steady behind all that. And it's to hold the lot in our consciousness. It's quite a hard thing, and I agree with what Glenda said about the fear aspect. Oh, you can call it fear, you can call it anything you like. I think the lower self is afraid of that other identity, that of the higher self, because we've been so used to sort of nurturing that lower self. This is me, this is who I am, that letting that go and seeing that there's something bigger than that, we do tremble, because we've got to get used to death. We've got to get used to the dying or the losing process in that. So I think the fear is quite real, actually. We would like to scrub it out, but it isn't. The fear of the unknown has always been very, very real. So hence I just want to say that, really.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I think that was a really interesting point, because up until very recently, and I see that part of the journey where I am now is I'm not fearful of the death. Yeah. I probably would say, well, I have said many times, my calling to go home, in a sense, is that I am ready. Yeah. And that, for me, especially if you don't, because sometimes you feel like you're on your own, and I know I'm not on my own, but it's like, and I'm feeling it now, and maybe that's because we're in the Satsang, because I was fine up until just a moment ago. So the feeling of letting go and wanting to be home, if that makes sense, is very powerful. The word I'm going to use is powerful. It's very powerful. It's very real. And then, yes, again, just like, is it Marion? Marion said that I've just realized again, I think that is the letting go. I'm always seeing every day. I've just been to a funeral the other day again. So I welcome, and it's like I welcome that for others. And but then again, I might be a minority in that group. You know what I mean? So and I'm thinking, oh, you know, they've gone home. You know what I mean? I'd love to, which is true. I'd love to. So, and then I wake up in the morning. You said it as well, Richard, because I don't have alarm clocks. I let go of those alarm clocks, and I don't own a watch. So when I wake up in the morning, I know, and it does take me a while to orientate myself back into the reality. So do you get what I mean? So this has been really, really interesting. As I said, this is my first satsang. It's very emotional, and I'm enjoying it. I'm really glad to meet you, because I could talk all day. That's why they call me Lodi G. So I do. I really understand that. So the death, and I think you just helped me put the dots together in a sense. So I've come to some kind of realization there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Perhaps I'll invite this last question, Richard, to close off today's satsang with the 6 minutes or so we have left. The question is how does wholeness evolve? How does wholeness evolve?
This isn't from you, Marion, is it? Oh, it is. How do I know these things? Let's play devil's advocate. I mean, you know, we are whole, and what's happened is in the early life we learn to be separated, we learn to be splintered, or we learn to be in some way divided, of course, and that's because the trauma of the early years, it seems, for just about everyone, involves us in compromise because of the dependent state of childhood. And so fairly soon on, we find ourselves, when I say soon on, I'm talking about 5 or 6, we find ourselves in a conflict of needs, a conflict of emotions, and most of us grow up without that changing very much. And so to go back to Marion's 3 minds, the head, the heart and the pelvis, or the thinking, feeling and will centers, they can become divided or in conflict or certainly misaligned and so on. So the way back to wholeness must be through a healing modality that addresses us as whole, because after all we were when we were tiny, and you know, there isn't a baby who's unintelligent, who knows when to cry when the world isn't conforming to its desires or needs, and so on and so on. So starting there in the oral stage on all the way on through, we don't return to that state of original wholeness, I wouldn't say. I say that what we do is we resurrect wholeness out of the ordeal of compromise and misalignment. And when we have that experience, it's a wonderful coming back to ourselves, because of course the human organism is inherently whole. So what we're dealing with is the dissonance, or the, you know, the out of tuneness, as it were, or the lack of communication between different layers or levels of our psyche. And we do it through whatever mixture or healing modality which goes deep enough for us to heal back into wholeness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I don't disagree with that. I think again our temporal self opens up all the pains of our ancestors that were never properly healed, never properly placed. And because they weren't placed, they cause us problems within us, within our community, within our families, within ourselves, and thus breaks into that wholeness that's always there and always has been there. But somehow there's a struggle between the non-whole, the world, and the eternal wholeness. And gradually, as that wholeness evolves up out of all the fragmentations of the parts, we regain, that's one word of using it, but we refine that wholeness as we heal the parts. So it's an interesting struggle. It's a bit like what existential philosophy says, really, this struggle between the particular and the universal. In other words, the whole and all the fragmentations. Again, flipping back to what Glenda was saying about feeling ready to go home. Her will is focusing, my opinion, as I felt about her, is focusing more on the wholeness than going into the world more and just fighting with all the little bits that we all have to fight with. And I think this is a decision we make on a daily basis. Am I going to feel my wholeness today? In which case we lock out the world a little bit and go into our own meditative place and feel our oneness. Or am I going to go on my chariot and get out there and see what's out there and have a little skirmish with the world? In which case we take on board a little bit more of the fragmentation. And we work on that. And we go, oh, I'm a bit weary of that. I feel a bit sick of that. Let's close the door on it again. And there is, in my opinion, a kind of seesaw between the wholeness and the non-wholeness inside us. Till eventually we age, or we don't necessarily age, but we reach a point where we say, I want to discard this body of mine, this shell that I've occupied for so long and all the shenanigans inside it, and go back to that peace, that oneness, and have a good rest.
Beautifully put.
Indeed. Richard, any final comments?
That's a big question. On? No, it's been lovely being here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. These occasions are always lovely and special and beautiful. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, Richard, for sharing your wisdom with us, and thank you, everyone, for your presence today. If you would like to follow up with Richard directly, you can email him at richard@therapyandspirituality.com, or you can follow up with Richard through his website at www.therapyandspirituality.com. Our next satsang will be next Friday, June 24th, 3:30 to 4:30 Eastern Standard Time, or 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. Central European Standard Time. If you have not already registered for the June 24th satsang, you can please do so through either the Sacred Attention Therapy website or by emailing me at info@sacredattentiontherapy.com. You're invited to submit your questions, and we had a potpourri of beautiful questions today. And if you want to submit yours for the next satsang, again, just simply submit them by email to me at info@sacredattentiontherapy.com. Thank you again, everyone, for being with us, and until next week. Bye-bye. There you go, Richard.
I got it.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.